The alien child, Jarek, screamed in terror as his family's battered spacecraft shuddered, the hull cracking and life support systems failing. His father, Caldris, was critically wounded, his body limp as his life bled out on the floor. His mother, Ira, held him close, helpless in the face of their impending doom. Their home planet had been obliterated by the ruthless Gragor Dominion, merciless insectoid warriors that left nothing but destruction in their wake. Jarek and his parents had barely escaped the carnage in a small shuttle. They fled into the vastness of space, but Caldris had been struck by shrapnel, leaving him bleeding and unconscious as their shuttle drifted aimlessly. The atmosphere was thinning, and the once loud hum of the ship's systems had faded into silence. Despite sending out distress calls to every ship nearby, all they got in return was the cold void. The supposed allies, the neutral Turex, the greedy Zornath, the cowardly Kelrans, all ignored their cries. One by one, they shut down communications and jumped away, unwilling to risk getting involved. No one would help. No one except one strange species from a distant part of the galaxy. Humans. A small ship from the Earth Coalition, Defiant, responded to the call. It was lightly armed, severely outgunned, and still half an hour away. 30 minutes felt like a lifetime. "Please," Era begged over the comms, her voice cracking. "Someone, anyone, help us." But all that met her pleas was silence. The Gragor warship loomed closer, its weapons locked on. The end was coming. Jarek clung to his mother, his small voice trembling as he whispered, "Mama, are we going to die?" Era held him close, her tears mixing with his. "I don't know, but we'll stay together no matter what." Then, as the Gragor ship powered up for its final strike, a new voice crackled through the comms. "This is Captain Daniel Rourke of the Earth Coalition ship Defiant. We're on our way." They were still far away, but Captain Rourke's voice carried something the family had lost: hope. However, hope was fragile. The Gragor ship was closing in fast. The humans were 30 minutes out, and the Zairan family had less than 5 minutes of life support left. Captain Rourke stood tall on the bridge of the Defiant, his jaw clenched as the Gragor vessel filled the view screen. He knew the odds. His ship wasn't a match for the Gragor's firepower, but that wasn't going to stop him. "Helm, set a direct course," Rourke ordered, his voice cold and determined. "Weapons, prepare to engage." The crew moved swiftly, their fingers flying over consoles. The Defiant surged forward, its engines blazing as it raced toward the Zairan family. But time was running out. Inside the shuttle, Jarek could barely breathe as the air grew thin. His father's breathing was ragged, shallow, his purple blood pooling beneath him. "Hold on, Caldris," Era whispered, her voice breaking. "Please, hold on." The Gragor warship loomed closer, charging its weapons for the killing blow. Back on the Defiant, Rourke stood firm, eyes locked on the enemy. "Fire!" he barked. The human ship's weaponry unleashed a barrage of missiles and laser fire, striking the Gragor vessel with precision. Explosions rippled across the insectoid ship's hull as the Defiant danced in the void, narrowly dodging return fire. But the Gragor ship was massive, and its response was swift. Lances of energy seared through the blackness, slamming into the Defiant's shields. "They're firing everything they've got, Captain," one of the crew shouted. "Good," Rourke replied calmly. "Let them. Keep firing. We're not backing off." But even as the Defiant held its own in the fight, inside the Zairan shuttle, the life support systems finally failed. The temperature plummeted, and the last of the breathable air was running out. Jarek shivered uncontrollably, his breath fogging the viewport as his vision began to blur. His mother held him tighter, rocking him gently as tears rolled down her face. "Just a little longer, baby. Just a little longer." Suddenly, in a flash of shimmering light, Jarek, Ira, and Caldris disappeared from the shuttle. They reappeared aboard the Defiant, collapsing onto the floor of the medical bay, gasping for air as the warmth of the ship's environment hit their frozen skin. Human medics were already in motion, surrounding Caldris and lifting him onto a medical bed. They worked with swift precision, scanning his injuries and immediately beginning treatment. Jarek, wide-eyed and still trembling, clung to his mother as they watched in awe at the technology and the strange, compassionate beings saving them. Captain Rourke entered the medical bay, kneeling beside the family. His voice was steady, but gentle. "You're safe now," he assured them. "We'll do everything we can to help your family." Jarek looked up at him, tears welling in his eyes. Why did you help us?" he asked, his voice shaking. "No one else would." Rourke smiled softly and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Because it's what we do," he said simply. "We don't leave people behind, not if we can help it." As the medics stabilized Caldris, the weight of what had just happened settled in. The humans had risked everything to save a family of strangers from across the galaxy, a family they didn't even know existed until moments ago. Era looked at her son and then back at the captain. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Back on the bridge, Captain Rourke knew they weren't out of the woods yet. The Gragor ship was still in pursuit, its weapon systems charging for another attack. "Target their engines," Rourke ordered. "Let's make sure they don't follow us." The Defiant fired one last salvo, hitting the Gragor ship directly in its propulsion system. Explosions rocked the insectoid vessel as its engines were destroyed, sending it drifting helplessly through space. The battle was over. As the Zairan family recovered in the safety of the human ship, Captain Rourke prepared for his next task, facing the Galactic Council. Days later, he stood before the council chamber, addressing the very species that had turned their backs on the Zairans. His voice was firm, filled with righteous anger. "When the Zairan family called for help, you ignored them. You left them to die. We didn't." The council sat in uncomfortable silence as Rourke's words echoed through the chamber. "You speak of peace and cooperation," Rourke continued, his voice rising, "but when innocent lives were at stake, you chose your own safety over theirs. This council is supposed to protect the vulnerable. If we can't do that, then what are we even here for?" Slowly, a few of the council members began to nod, shame washing over their faces. The silence that followed was heavy, but Captain Rourke had said all that needed to be said. In the medical bay, Jarek and Era watched the proceedings on a screen. Jarek looked up at his mother, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "They're heroes, aren't they?" Era smiled, pulling him close. Yes, they are." As the Defiant continued its journey through the stars, Jarek knew his life had changed forever. He had seen the worst of the galaxy, but he had also seen the best. The humans had shown him that even in the darkest corners of space, there were still those who would fight for what was right. And for the first time since the Gragor attack, he believed that maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay.